So not too long ago, I had made a deck list with one of the newest legendary creatures to be put into Magic the Gathering, Leovold, Emissary of Trest. As it stands, he has only been in the game for about a month. The second conspiracy set was released August 26th, and now we're verging on September 26th, which will be when the next ban list update is going to be posted, because Kaladesh is going to be released the Friday of the same week. The Duel Commander Rules Committee typically does update their ban lists with every new expansion that comes out, so tomorrow we're going to get to see what the update is. And since that time is real close, I want to talk about Leovold, and I want to explain why I think he might get banned. But then again, he might not for several other reasons. First things first, the first thing you will notice with Leovold Emissary Trest is that he is 3 colors, and he uses 3 of the best colors in Duel Commander right now. Green will give you access to cheap mana dorks such as Llanowar Elves, Finhorn Elves, Birds of Paradise, and all kinds of other similar 1 converted mana cost creatures that you can play down turn 1, and then tap for 1 mana. And if you have 2 untapped lands on turn 2, and then tap your mana dork that you played the first turn, you will then have 3 mana on turn 2, and thus you will be able to play Leovold on the second turn, which I also forgot to mention that he is one of those 3 CMC generals. He is there with Janara, Asura of War, Anafen's the Foremost, and one that also recently got banned, Marath, Will of the Wild. Well, at least as a general. I mean, you could still play him in your main deck, but there's almost no point in doing so, considering he was made specifically to be used as general. Blue will give you cheap counterspells, as I said earlier, so you will easily be able to make good trades with your opponents, especially if they're playing bigger spells. Blue has cards like Counterspell, Mana Leak, and Daze, and Force of Will. One card that I would still like to get, even if this guy gets banned, because I still have a deck idea that, of course, will play blue. Well, Black's popularity in the format only recently picked up with cards like Necrotic Ooze and generals like Sidisi Undead Vizier, essentially another tutor on a stick. But Zur the Enchanter and Yisan the Wanderer Bard were more powerful generals than that. Zur has 3 colors, 3 of the best colors in the format. He has blue and he has black, so you can play a bunch of counterspell. And Zur specifically can get whatever sort of enchantment you would need at any point in the game. You could easily pull a Robe of Mirrors or something that gives Zur Shroud so he's untargetable. You could easily pull something like a Detention Sphere and Oblivion Ring to get rid of something on the field that's causing you trouble. Or if someone's playing a graveyard-based strategy, you could just fetch out Rest in Peace. Or if someone's deck is centered around their commander a little too much, pull out Nevermore and name their commander, and then find a way to kill it, which I'm sure in the deck, Zur could just tutor it up. And Yisan the Wanderer Bard's a similar story. Well, he's limited to 1 color, but part of what made him as good as he was able to come out turn 2 and then fetch for the first creature on turn 3. But Sidisi costs 5 mana and he's restricted to 1 color. So that makes him less powerful than the other 2, but now we're going to go back on topic. Black has a bunch of good tutors as well. Things like Demonic Tutor, Tainted Pact, and Dark Petition. These are among some of the best cards that let you search your library for whatever card you'd want at any specific time. Demonic Tutor, hands down, is the best one of them all. Tainted Pact is pretty close in a 3-color deck or more, because you could easily just build a deck to have little to no basic lands, so that you won't ever have to worry about hitting 2 cards of the same name and you could take a card that you want. And Dark Petition functions a lot like Demonic Tutor, but you do have to have 5 mana, and it's very, very easy to get at least 2 instant or sorceries in your graveyard, so there's that. Not to mention, Leovold's first effect is game warping if you know how to use it in the right way. Even if you don't try to capitalize on making your opponents discard their hands to draw just 1 card, his first effect may already be negatively impacting your opponent, just by being on the field. Say if your opponent is running a bunch of cards that let them draw more cards, those cards will essentially be neutered because they won't be able to draw more 1 card per turn. After their draw phase, they're done drawing for that turn. And even if they try and use something at instant speed on your turn, they'll still only get a maximum of 1 card. And then I read the second line of text, which gives you cards if they target your stuff or you yourself, which is why I initially tried to build the deck in such a way to include as many permanents as possible, less instant and sorceries, and more cards would actually stay on the field, so that there would be more things that had to worry about targeting, thus giving me more cards. But oftentimes I find that I wasn't getting too many cards off of Leovold's second ability, so I just gradually put more instants and sorceries into the deck. Now I'm going to go into more detail of his first ability, which limits the opponent to drawing 1 card per turn. This is very easily abused with cards like Windfall and Daze Undoing, which will force the player to either discard their hand or just put it in the library, which the latter is even better if they're playing a graveyard-based strategy. Sure, you could draw a lot more cards than just 1, but they essentially lose almost all of their hand. If you can play this early on in the game, before they really develop a board state, you're almost guaranteed to win the game from that point onward. But Duel Commander is a fast format, so people will often be able to play spells at as quick a rate as you do. They may also have their general on the field by turn 2, something like, say if they're playing Janara on Offenza, or okay, well Marath is banned, I'm not going to include him as an example, but you get the idea. And the format is just filled with cheap and fast spells, so chances are they may have unloaded a bunch of their hand by the time you can play a Windfall or Daze Undoing, and the effect won't be quite as great. It's not like as spectacular to make them discard 3 cards to draw 1, as say if they had to discard like 6 or 7. Then there's cards like Anvil of Bogarden and Gaia Reach Sanitarium, which, when if they're used correctly with Leovold, can actually lock your opponent out of the game. Part of this is actually achieved by just dropping their hand size to 1 with the Windfall or the Daze Undoing that I mentioned earlier. I mean, you could also use Dark Deal, but it's like the worst of the 3 cards in that category. Both of these cards allow the opponent to draw an extra card, but then they have to discard 1, but with Leovold out, they will not get to draw the second card because they can only draw 1 per turn, but they still do have to discard a card, so their hand size won't be getting any bigger when Leovold is out. And if their hand size is 0 when you land that combo, unless they have an instant spell or something with flash to destroy either the Anvil, the Gaia Reach Sanitarium, or preferably Leovold himself, they will not be able to play their card because they'll simply have to discard it before they can ever cast it in their main phase. Not to mention, we also get cards like Jace the Mind Sculptor, Sylvan Library, and Phyrexian Arena in these colors. Yeah, Jace is a fair card. Wait a minute. But I very well may be wrong about Leovold getting banned so soon because, as I said earlier, he has only been in the game for about a month. The Conspiracy Take the Crown set, which he's in, was released August 26th. And we are going to be September 26th tomorrow, so chances are the Duel Commander Rules Committee may still be trying to determine how powerful this guy really is before they can come to a decision as to whether to ban him or not. Because usually banning something or someone is oftentimes reserved for an extreme case as a last resort because it indefinitely has been making a negative contribution to whatever it was in. And it's only been a month, and this guy hasn't even appeared that much. One of the decks I've seen him appear in didn't even capitalize on the fact that you could just make your opponent discard their hand to draw 1 card. Okay, well I'm going to talk about that. Duel Commander is also filled with a lot of disruption, and blue being one of the more popular colors in the meta, there will be a lot of counterspell-like effects that could pretty much also get in the way. Chances are, your opponents will often be running counterspell-like effects too, one of which could either counter Leovold or counter whatever spell you're trying to play to make them discard their hand. So you still might not be able to get the combo off, and by the time you can, they might only be discarding like 2 or 3 cards, which isn't really as groundbreaking as say if they had to discard like 5 or 6 or maybe even a whole 7. But then again, Duel Commander has a pretty big ban list, slightly bigger than that of multiplayer. Understandably this is the case because in multiplayer there is such thing as politics, which in a 1v1 format there isn't. Say if one person in a group of 4 pulls out a combo or maintains a board state which is extremely unfair to the game, the other 3 players may decide to form a truce until they eliminate that player on top from the game. And there's nothing worse than having to deal with 3 players at the same time. Imagine having 3 time walks played against you. I'm just gonna quote that right there. So it's very understandable that they have a big ban list here, in which they have a lot more generals that can't be played on it than, say, regular multiplayer Commander. Tasker the Golden Fang, Yasen the Wanderer Bardzer, the Enchanter, Olaro, Marath, Edric, Deravi, all of these cards that I named just now are playable in multiplayer Commander. Well, Edric's not as busted in multiplayer Commander because your opponents can draw cards off of his effect too, because it's not just like one opponent in the game. So I'm pretty much going to conclude this video saying that I thought Leovold Emissary of Trest was for sure going to get banned because of how powerful the combos surrounding him really were, but it is actually sort of difficult to land these in a format that's filled with disruption, and this guy has only been in the game for about a month, so it might just be too soon for the Duel Commander Rules Committee to just come to conclusions right away and just outright ban him from the format. Well, at least as a general anyway. I do imagine that they're going to bring this guy up when they do publish their new ban list, and they're probably going to say that they are still trying to evaluate this guy's power level in the format. But many of the points I just made in this video are probably very valid, and they're probably going to be mentioned, and these points are going to be considered whether or not this guy is going to get banned.